to that lighted space within yourself, that well of joy, light, and love. And breathe it in. And as we breathe it out, we share it with the whole group. Joy, light, and love. Recollecting that our true nature is that of essential divinity. We are spirit, we are soul, and we are body. And yet we are one. Oh.
Well, it's my job to kick things off here, so to speak. So I was just saying to Gail that we're really lucky because all of our buddies are here. This makes it real simple. I know just about everybody in here. I don't think you and I have met, though. What is your name?
Mareva.
Mareva. Do you know everybody? Everybody know Mareva? Yeah? Okay, good. We were going to go through the exercise of introducing each other, but yeah, what's the point? Everybody knows everybody, yeah? So,
And
but,
who are you?
I'm Keith Black.
Keith. Nice to
Keith.
meet you, Keith.
Good to meet you. I'm Bill Young. And we were invited here really to speak about an initiative that Glenda and I have been interested in for some time, and we really started working on it while we were at Meditation Mount. So it's been over a period of a couple of years, I guess, that we've been thinking about it, working with it. And then I guess about a year and a half ago, something like that, we started formally putting some things on paper about something that we coined the Points of Light. And Lynn Havenstrite, who's just joined us back there, was very, very helpful, as was Linda Garrett. And so we worked together for a good while putting some ideas together. And now that we are newly liberated, we are looking forward to continuing on this initiative that we started. And the point of the Points of Light Circle, the goal, I guess, is to introduce people to meditation who don't know anything about it, who have never been associated with the teachings, haven't been introduced to them at all. And so in this period leading up to the year 2025, we hope to introduce a lot of new people to the teachings and to the practice of meditation primarily. So as we go through this, I want to invite you to break in, ask questions, make comments, whatever. It's really, for us anyway, very informal. It don't need to be real formal. So if something, a piece of inspiration comes, we'll put it out there.
Yeah, because it might help us in the formation of our basic structure for the Points of Light circles. It's still in the formative stage. It has been in the formative stage for 2 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So the whole idea for us, anyway, here is to just talk it out, get it out there, let people know what we're looking at doing, if it seems relevant to the people that we're talking to, and if there are people who want to become involved with us, then that's the way we'll move. So we're exploring still.
And
But-
I'd also like to say that Gail Dimitrov.
Oh, Gail was the
She
very
was
first
the very
one.
first person
I forgot about that.
we talked to about these points of light
That goes
groups.
so far back, I'd forgotten
And-
all about it.
And
It
I
was the-
remember Gail and
That's
Robbie
right.
coming to Meditation Mound, and
My gosh.
she sat with us, and we spent a whole weekend.
If it weren't for you,
Brainstorming.
that whole thing would not have happened. I remember that, my goodness. Yeah. Thank you very much. So here we go. Yeah.
So it's
Yeah, my
really
goodness,
fortuitous
that's right.
that Gail is here and Lynn is here. That's the
I
foursome
know.
again.
I know. Amazing. Okay. So Glenda's going to take over from here
Well,
and
Okay.
for a few minutes.
You've introduced yourself,
Yeah.
and most of you know me. A few of you don't. My name is Glenda Christian Young. I've been in the esoteric field for quite a number of years now. And I guess you might say that my basic, I think I'll talk about what happened to me later on. And I'll just say that my interest lies in sharing the basic esoteric teachings and meditation with people that are not in this field yet. And I want to start off with a little preliminary thoughts that I sort of devised over the last couple of days. In several of the Alice Bailey books, namely The Light of the Soul and A Treatise on Cosmic Fire, Master DK tells us that the Eastern culture attained its spiritual high water mark, its spiritual climax during the days of the Buddha. And he said around 500 BC or around thereabouts, the Buddha brought teachings of a first-rate nature which struck a shattering blow to human desire and the impermanence of all things physical, material. And he created such a spiritual momentum during that period that many, many of his disciples attained liberation from the necessity of incarnation. And I think the Tibetan called it, there was a great ingathering of our arhats at this time. And then he went on to say that the tide of spiritual life since then has been steadily flowing to the West. And he said a great second-rate teaching impulse was initiated by the Christ, Buddha's close associate, about 2,000 years ago, the Lord Maitreya. And he says that this great spiritual second-rate teaching cycle is now reaching its peak. And he gave the years 1965 to 2025. Here again, we get these same dates from a little bit different perspective. So he says that during this period, there will be an even greater number of disciples achieving illumination and liberation than before. So another huge ingathering of arhats. These dates are in the mind of the world group. And I think that we have been spiritually impressed to recall these dates, to think about them, and to try to understand the significance of these dates and what it means to us right now, because we're living in an extraordinary cycle. And when I say extraordinary, this great Christ consciousness is flowing into its highest peak ever on this planet, at least that we know about. And it is this great tide of love and light that is with us now. And if we so choose, we can place ourselves into this, and the force will be with us. Whatever initiative that we decide to do, that we decide to implement on behalf of the Christ and of the Buddha, this huge tide will be pushing us, helping us, assisting us, surrounding us, and protecting us. And I think as one world group, if we take advantage of this cycle now, we will be able to open the heart of humanity wider and deeper than it's ever been opened before. And that's because we ourselves will have our heart centers open to the heart of the hierarchy, the Christ. Not long ago, I ran across a statement of Master DK's to one of his disciples in the Dina books. And he said to one of these disciples, he said, "There are many aspirants in the world searching for the teachings that will put them in contact with their soul." He urged his disciples, or those who were available and could do so, to take the teachings to these aspirants and bring them on the path of discipleship and into the ashram. In essence, he was urging them to break away from that very sheltered, esoteric group work mode or culture that they had been in for quite a long time, that he and Alice Bailey had provided for them. It was important. But then now they wanted them to move into a new cycle where they would break loose of this culture and go out and freely mix with people who were not esotericists, who were aspirants, and who could be brought onto the path and eventually into the ashram. He said, these people deeply need the beauty and the joy of the inner teachings of the Christ. This statement has been such an inspiration to me and to William, and I hope it is to you too, because I think that a new initiative is brewing in the World Group that is inspiring us to take these teachings out into the world to a wider group of people and bring them in to the hierarchy. And as Bill said, William, trying to remember to call him William. Over these past 2 years, we've been working with Lynn and Glenda, and we have been thinking about how can this be done. Well, just in the last few days, we have come up with a way that it can be done. And Bill's going to show that to you in just a moment. It's really the creation, and when I say show you, he's going to put it all on the board for you. It's really the creation of a network of small study groups that can be conducted in people's homes or in community gathering places. And we've been thinking, as I said, of these small study groups as points of light circles that will eventually add their radiance to the already established worldwide group of light. So,
it's been interesting to me to visit with various people these last couple of days that we've been here because I've heard and I've also sensed some sort of, I don't know what you would say, some sort of movement that seems to be touching a lot of people and impressing on them the need to maybe move away from so much structure and to be more fluid and more adaptable and to move out of the tight group, little individual group type things and into the wider world group and become more of a part of that. And I think there are a lot of people, and I know some of you here are some of those people who have work that you want to do, that you want to see done in the world. And so this, when you were talking about the Tibetan statement there, I was thinking about how that has been manifesting to me through conversation here the last few days with people. That's not to say that group work is, something we want to get away from, because it's not. It's just in a different way. And you'll be able to guess my background very quickly here, but I remember that the Master Jesus, whenever he had his disciples around him, it was a very close-knit group organization, and they studied with one another, and the Christ taught them, and eventually he said, now it's time for you to go out there and do your thing, and he sent them out 2 by 2 and said, take it out there to people who don't know about it. And when she was talking a moment ago, my roots came back to me, and it's like, oh wow, it's just same old. It's nothing new under the sun, right? But we all have to we have to draw upon our own well of experience, and a lot of my experience comes from marketing. And part of what I did for a number of years was to build very, very large marketing organizations. And so this whole little thing about going wide and deep comes from my background. Also reminds me of that little song in the church, deep and wide.
Deep and wide, yeah. It's been a long time.
So anyway, what I wanted to talk about for a few minutes is how we actually see this initiative taking place and maybe how to grow it. And this is where, if you have some thoughts and ideas, I'd love to hear them. And Lynn, please chime in anytime, because you and Gail, you have just as much background in this just about as we do. So, but one of the first things, when I talk about going wide, this is how we built our marketing organization. So we identified key people, first of all. So if you're going to build some sort of distribution network system, you got to have some key players. So our thoughts here is to find those people, primarily in the United States, because that's where we are and it's easier to work here, etc., but all over the world, and who want to be a part of this initiative to take the teaching, the practice of meditation to people who don't know what it is. To me, there is a great misunderstanding around the world about what meditation truly is. And there's all kinds of stuff that people are doing and calling it meditation. But to take this particular type of meditation that we're all familiar with out there, I think would be a wonderful, wonderful service to humanity. And it's through that, I believe, that people who have an interest will go deeper and deeper into their studies, and they can then get involved with other groups or whatever. But first things first. So the first thing for us is to identify key people around the United States and around the world who might want to take part in this. And so Glenda and I see our role, and maybe some others who might want to work with us, as supporting, as a support role, just to move around and to help people, to support them, to see them, to help them in their efforts to grow their groups and things like that. But
and also later on I'll be telling you about bringing them the materials that they need to work with. And of course they add their own materials, but give them some good materials to start off with.
So our goal by the year 2025, if this initiative is undertaken, if there's enough support for it and people really want to get involved in this, is to have groups in every state of the Union and in every major country around the world. And so this is what I mean by going wide and deep. You're going to see me draw a few circles here. But so, yeah, some of you've done this before, I can tell. When I hear somebody chuckling, it's like, oh God, not again. I thought I'd gone through all that already. But anyway, so we want to see basically countries, people in countries, people in states, who are our key people that we'll be talking to, we'll getting ideas from, sharing ideas. And there are a lot of people here at the conference who are already kind of interested in this sort of a thing. Olivia Hansen is one of them, and she, with her synthesis group, is very much interested in this kind of a thing. So the first thing we want to do is to connect with people, find out who's interested. And so this is the wide part of it. So when you start identifying key people who can help you, then you break it down and say these are countries. And of course, here's the United States, and we've got 50 states. And so in each one of these, we want to identify a state coordinator, somebody who will be interested enough in this initiative to say, we'll work with you, we will be responsible for finding people around the state who want to start their own little groups. And so then, of course, you start seeing these smaller groups forming. And initially, when we were talking about it, we were envisioning a group that would be maybe 8 or 10 people, just something small enough.
Or less.
Yeah,
6.
small enough for people to have in their home. If it got any bigger than that, it probably was time for it to break up and start something that's a little more convenient and a little easier to manage in someone else's home, or maybe in a little meeting area or something like that. But originally we had talked about having an actual curriculum, and we worked for a good while looking to see what that might be. And for right now, that's kind of what we're talking about. But what we would be looking at doing is training key people for these coordinator positions, and these we just call group facilitators, little meditation group facilitators and coordinators, and then your key people in the various countries. And teach them how to grow groups. And that's what my background was how do you find people, and then how do you support them, and how do you motivate them to keep things going. And as any of you who have started groups know, it's not an easy thing to do. You know, it's not easy to keep that interest. People come, people go, and if you do it long enough, you eventually have a core group of people who will continue it on. So that's what we're looking for originally, or initially, and we expect probably that people would want to meet weekly or maybe bi-weekly to learn meditation, to learn maybe the makeup of the human being, human and divine, learn some things maybe about the 7 rays and on and on. But
I think the point is that introduce these esoteric teachings in a very slow and a very easy way, so that they're not bowled over, because I think that the success of this venture depends on using the right language, terminology, materials. If you use too much esoteric lingo, you're going to bowl people over right away, and they're not going to understand it. They're not going to really like it because they don't understand it. But we have to learn to step it down. That doesn't mean dumb it down, because a lot of so-called aspirants are really very intelligent people. They're becoming spiritually awakened. They are modern, intelligent people in many different walks of life, and they're widely read. So they have to be spoken to with intelligence. And many of them are opening up their intuition, so they'll know if this is something real or if it's not real. So I see that our materials have to be a combination of various approaches. There have to be excerpts from the esoteric writings with a lot of supporting materials from all the different sciences, from contemporary writings of many different kinds, medicine, business, psychology. But I especially am into the sciences. I think the cutting edges that physics is telling us about the nature of the human being dovetails right in with the esoteric teachings about the human being. So if we can manage to bring these kinds of teachings and their related modern contemporary writings to the esoteric teachings, I think these people will take notice. But the core materials have to be centered on the multidimensional nature of the human being. And we're not just to let them know from the beginning that we're not simply physical beings in a physical material universe, but that we are a divine being with soul consciousness functioning through a series of complex energy fields. This is like a core teaching from the very beginning. And then, of course, we give them various meditation techniques that will help them to realize these various aspects of their being, and will help them to touch into those centers of light and love and joy. Once they begin to tap into these inner streams of light and love within themselves, I think this will tell them that this is a real program, something to spend their time on, maybe even their life on. So this is how I see us really introducing this to people and getting them to stay in these groups.
At this point, I want to ask for comment. Your own experiences a little bit. We'll go a little farther here in a few minutes, but it's like I said a moment ago, there's nothing new under the sun. This is not a new idea, but it is something as a new initiative for us to undertake, and curious about some of your comments.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Assuming that this teaching will be taken to a fairly rudimentary level to people who are novices in meditation, living as I do in East County, San Diego, Jerry Falwell territory, how would you answer the question, I'm a Christian, but I'm interested in what you're saying, Glenda and Bill. Is this going to conflict with my religious perspective?
That's really interesting because you may be in Jerry Falwell's territory, but we're moving to Texas. You can't imagine.
That's why I trust your answer.
We wanted to find the most challenging place we
You
possibly
cannot
could.
imagine how many people are so against anything that is not straight line Baptist or Christian. I was going to say cosmology, but it wouldn't be cosmology. It would be theology.
Theology.
So assuming
Let me
that
answer
I'm in the
that.
audience
Okay, he
and
wants to answer it.
I'm asking this question. I'm not Gail. I'm
Yeah.
somebody else.
All right.
Y'all.
Okay.
You are Letitia. Letitia. I'll answer that from my perspective. Your background is prayer, and that's where you feel comfortable, that's where you come from, that's what you've been taught. And it was also my background, and still is. But for me, prayer is talking to God. Meditation is learning to listen to God. And there are ways to do that. Just as in prayer, you've got something on your mind, we call that a seed thought in meditation. And so we put that before God, and then we learn to be very quiet and try to listen and get the answer instead of doing all the talking.
That's very good.
Now,
That's nice.
Now, what William has done is he's come from a Baptist background. He was a deacon in his church. I mean, that can't be any more entrenched in the Christian methodology or whatever. So, I mean, it's been a long time since I was in the Christian church, as a matter of fact, or the Baptist church. I was out of it at a very young age. But he remembers all of the things that people talk about and what their complaints are about other teachings. So he has a good ability to wrap back and forth with those kinds.
Yeah, and I see it too as a great well of aspirants, because for me, when I'm kind of jumping ahead here, but who cares? Let's just kind of flow with it. For me, when I was introduced, put it another way, the path I took to becoming introduced to this work was through the Christian church. And I became a deacon, yes, that's true, but I also taught adult Bible study for about 5 years. And I'm the kind of person that when I get into something, I really get into it. And so I studied very, very deeply. I would go to specific words, and I would look up the Greek and the Aramaic and all these other languages to see what does that word really mean. When I'm reading this passage in the Bible, is it saying what I think it's saying? And I was astounded that most of the time the answer was no. It's not saying what I thought it was saying. It's saying something else. And that got my curiosity aroused, and I thought, how much have I missed? And, one of the great questions I had was, I'm supposed to, and I did, of course, walk down the aisle, accept Jesus Christ as my Savior, be baptized, and voila, everything is great. My soul has been saved. But I had this burning question, what is my soul? And nobody could answer the question. I was astounded by that. It was just amazing. And so that was the first thing I wanted to know, is what is my soul? And the second thing was, I read this New Testament thoroughly. I'm fairly convinced that Christ is not Jesus' last name. What's the deal on that anyway? You know, what is Jesus Christ? What does that mean? Because other places it was just called Christ, etc., etc. So, you know, I had all of these answers, and I mean these questions, and I know I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people in the churches today who have gone as far as they can go with that, I believe. And I think the churches do a wonderful job of preparing people. It's, to me, it's like the first initiation, really. That's sort of the step for a lot of people. But then they come to a point where they need something else. And that's what, to me, these teachings are all about. It's when you're ready, the teacher appears, right? And that's certainly what happened to me.
You know, Helena, the song that you played last night about Christ and me and off to the left and to the right, and that is a very, very beautiful song that could be played in some of these early forming groups, because a lot of the people come in from traditional Christian churches and they already have this identification with the Christ. And so you don't want to, you want to honor that and play the music for them and let them know that you honor the Christ. And then slowly but surely you lead them into a much wider understanding of the Christ. And it can be done, but it has to be done adroitly. I mean, slowly.
You know, aspirants are the target for us. It's, you know, we've, what was our old saying? We preached to the choir long enough. It's time now to go out and talk to people who don't know anything but are looking. And where was I going with that? Oh, yeah. Once I got into this work and we started thinking about this, you know, the biggest problem for people who would like to have a little meditation study group is, I don't know anybody. I don't know anybody who, I'm the only person I know who has any interest in meditation. Nobody else I know has any interest in it, etc. And so the big question is, where am I going to get these people to come and study and meditate together and what have you? And I'm reminded of just my own situation, and you will all be reminded of yours, and I would love to hear that in just a few minutes, about how did you come to be where you are? Why are you sitting in this room? What brought you here originally? Because when you think back, that's where the people are, you know, who are looking, who are ready to be introduced to these things. And for me, of course, it was the church. And after getting involved, and of course at Meditation Mount, we were really into the full moon meetings on a regular cyclical basis. And I thought, what a wonderful thing, because if you had a much more ecumenical sort of approach to the teachings, you know, people in various religions can see the value of at least one thing, and that is, there is this great signal that God put in the sky for us called the full moon. And one thing that we can do together is every spiritual person in the world can do something. Doesn't have to be meditation. It can be your prayer meeting. It can be whatever it is you do. But recognize that for what it is and realize that's one time a month that everybody in the world, every spiritually minded person in the world, can at one time get together and do something. So that to me is a very non-threatening introduction to people who are in the church, and to let them do whatever it is that they want to do at that
With
time.
a little guidance. With a little guidance.
But, you know, that's a wonderful time to introduce the idea of simple meditation, listening to God.
I have a question about that. Are people who are basically fundamental,
Uh-huh.
like let's just imagine where you were when would you
Okay.
have been open if there was a
poster put on full moon meditation meetings. Would you have?
I don't think I would have put full moon meditation meetings on there. I don't think that's the way I would have done it, so the answer is probably not. Because full moon and church do not go together,
Right.
first of all.
That's the question, yeah.
That's all kinds of connotations come up, from howling at it to, putting on cloaks and going around a little fire and chanting or something, But I think that talking about it in a different way is the way to introduce that concept. Meditation, see, the Bible is full of references to meditation.
Yeah.
It's everywhere in there. Prayer and meditation, my gosh, Old Testament, New Testament, whatever is your thing, whether you're Jewish or you're Christian or whatever, it all fits because it's all through the Bible. But somehow or another, especially in the Christian church, the meditation part has been kind of forgotten. So I don't think there's anything foreign, especially about meditation, but full moon has to be introduced, I think, in a explanatory way. I wouldn't put it on a poster, but I would say, hey, here is a time that everybody can recognize as a signal for us all to do whatever it is we do.
Join together and
Yeah.
approach God in many different ways, whether it's through prayer or many different kinds of meditation. We can all approach God
Yeah.
and create this wonderful vibratory, elevated vibratory energy that will enhance our own spiritual path as well as the path of humanity. Have to do it in ways that they think that they're serving. Make it a service. Something that they're going to receive, but also service to humanity.
I wanted to hear from some of you, if you would be so kind as to share with us what got you interested in these teachings. Why are you here?
Where were you?
Yeah, where were you? And also, you might at the same time share some of your thoughts about what we've been saying. We're full of hooey, or hey, sounds like a good idea. Maybe here's a thought or a suggestion.
Yeah, that's very good, and I would like to hear from them, but you forgot one very salient part, and you were
surprising.
going to be discussing how these people could get together once a year at gatherings, local gatherings, regional gatherings, and then eventually, if we had enough people, to introduce them to a big gathering like this, the University of the Seven Rays Conference. It would be wonderful to be able to bring in people who were not really highly educated in the field of esotericism, but who had some experience with their study groups, and then they would all come to a conference like this.
Yeah.
And that there would be basic courses offered, basic breakouts that they could come to and learn certain things.
Well, there's a model for that here at the Seven Rays already. It's called the 28 Rules Group, which was actually started online, and yet they come here once a year together. And so there's always the need to use the technology that's out there, and the internet is that great gathering point for people. But in my experience, it's also a need for people to get together face to face and to develop relationships and a sense of community and those kinds of things. And so, yeah, that's where in my thinking about this and going back and drawing on my experience, saying it would be nice, to have these smaller groups get together from time to time, maybe just once a year or something, in a sort of a statewide or even a regional kind of a gathering where several states get together and just get to know each other. And who was it? It was Barbara Valacar I was talking to this morning. And she was talking about a gathering that they had up in her, what's the name of her thing? Whatever it is right now.
Upstate New York.
Yeah. Can't think of the name of it, but anyway, in December, and it was very informal. She funds a number of different groups, and so they come together. And at first, they feel like they have to be there because she's funding them, so they come and everybody's a little stiff and, by Friday night, she said, we have a little bit more relaxing kind of atmosphere where we have dinner and stuff out, and people are just getting together and talking. And by Saturday, everybody is so excited about what each other is doing because they've gotten the chance to talk to each other and really get to know one another and to hear what's going on with each other rather than it being so structured, and there's nothing wrong with that either, but the excitement to me is for people to be able to talk with one another and to share with each other what's going on. And that's what we see happening at those gatherings.
And even in your study groups, I think sharing your personal experiences with the materials and with the meditations is very important. I find that if you just stick to the dry material and you try to be very stilted and stiff when you and expound on it from an intellectual point of view, it doesn't work. You have to open your heart and feel free to talk about your experiences and your fears or whatever, and your joys, things that you've learned, all the good experiences that you've had since you've been together as a study meditation group. So I think personal experience and sharing time is extremely important in study groups and in a conference like this. People have to have the time to do this with one another.
So let's try it. Who wants to help out and just say how you get started? Where were you whenever this whole thing happened for you?
Well, I was in New Zealand, and I got this letter, and there was a poster saying that Alan Oken was coming to New Zealand.
And you knew who he was?
No. Well, yes, because I've been studying his books for years.
Okay.
Never met him.
Uh-huh.
Never thought I would meet him. Here he was in New Zealand, and he was giving this talk at an astrological conference. And my friend, the poster was very simple. It just had a big picture of Alan. And then Alan Oken underneath it. And then down in one corner, very provocatively, it said, a disciple of the Tibetan master Djwhal Khul. Oh, what's that? And my friend, just in a black pen, scrawled across it, I think he's one of us.
Oh.
Well, that was an intrigue. I thought, what version of us is he? And who are we?
Well, what were you doing at the time? Were you were studying astrology?
I was studying astrology.
Okay.
And, various other mystical, spiritual, esoteric things.
Mm-hmm. But you had not really come into the true esoteric stream.
Absolutely.
Okay. That was wonderful. So that was how you were introduced to it. That's a wonderful story. I enjoyed
Alan
that
Oken.
very much.
Wow, I hadn't seen
So
Alan in years.
You had a story.
Yes. Well, I was in Jackson, Mississippi.
Wow.
I went to a place to eat lunch that I heard was nutritious and fairly reasonable.
Uh-huh.
It was the basement of the YMCA in Jackson, Mississippi, at the YMCA.
Yeah.
Young Men's Christian Association.
Yeah.
Downtown Jackson, yeah, on state, yeah. And so I had lunch there, and there was this little notice there that said that there was going to be a discussion, that there was a meeting twice a week, and the discussion was, where does energy come from?
Where does energy come from?
What about, so that was a scientific approach that caught me because the Jesus story and all that didn't appeal to me. I thought it was a little bit nice fairy tale for anybody that needed it, but I didn't need that. I needed a viable means to get through life, what. So initially I had the question dropped in my head, how did I come here? Not who am I, but how did I come here? So that fit, energy and how I came here somehow in my really ignorant mind, just somehow, well, I'll go to that and see what it is.
Was it a good presentation, or did it intrigue you?
Ray Boone.
Oh, with
It was
Ray.
Ray Boone.
Uh-huh.
Ray Boone and 45-minute World Service meditation group,
Oh.
and then an hour and a half study, and consequently I was introduced to Alan Bailey.
Uh-huh.
But I slid into this on a purely scientific, mental thing. There was no I didn't see any feeling in it for years, any heart at all. I said, okay, let's learn what it is. And
Well, great.
So-
That's very
but
interesting.
one of my points about this, it was in Jackson, Mississippi.
Ah.
I mean, that is the Bible.
Bible Belt.
That's the
Deepest
buckle of the Bible Belt.
Yeah, there you go. Good way to
And,
put it.
you know, a Methodist or Baptist or whatever church on every
Moses is on the
corner.
courthouse.
Yeah.
With the tablets.
And when I found out what it was, I was astounded at my good fortune just to happen to be there.
You didn't
And-
feel like you'd been had when you got there, huh?
Oh, no. I felt like everybody else had been had and I was on the right track. I was grateful from the get-go. And when I showed up to the appropriate place and Dr. Rosman, we were meeting his group, and Ray was the facilitator of the group, and the meeting started at 7 o'clock or whatever was going to happen. And they had a little piece of paper there that gave you the outline of what was going to happen, what to expect. And it started at 7 o'clock, and it was explained that the phone came off the hook and the door was locked at 7 o'clock. Not a minute before, not a minute after.
Wow.
We started promptly.
Well, that-
And I sat there on a zabuton. I chose to sit, in Indian style on the ground, on the floor. And something told me, you better leave if you're going to leave, or else be prepared to stay.
Oh.
And you couldn't
I
get
almost
up.
Bolted.
so-
No, I almost bolted. I got real claustrophobic, and I was perspiring and cold and shivering. And then it was 7 o'clock, and the door clicked, and I just surrendered.
Oh, wow.
You're in.
You're in.
And
What a
something
lovely
told
story.
me- yeah, it was just, the timing was exquisite. I was at the right place at the
Yeah.
right time. But the interesting thing I think about this is not everybody is a Christian just because we're in Christian territory. Some are ready
They
to
don't
step
know it.
back, and they're getting the feeling that they're dissatisfied, or they want to break away from the old traditions, but there's no place to go to,
Mhm.
And, the thrill of a 10-year warranty on a carpet doesn't thrill them anymore. It's like, what else is there to do?
Heidi, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
No, you keep raising your hand like I have something I want to share.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
Oh.
so
Inadvertently.
that's
It's a little
kind of
twitch
my whole
she's
point, is
got.
not everybody is still a satisfied Christian. Oh, there's going
That's
to be
right.
opposition. There was opposition.
Anybody else have
Yeah.
an experience?
Yeah.
Well, I would like to share one. Actually. Well, we talked at lunchtime about it, so
Yeah.
I
No, go ahead.
make the
Please
story
do.
short. But I was pretty young. I was just, having a huge change in my life, thanks Uranus transit. And I just got, at that age, so I just got a very simple sentence, or very simple idea of what I want to do in this life. And I want to work with people. So I've had that sense of liberating human minds with it. Anyway, I was very much searching for how can I understand the human nature better. So that was really the question in my mind, which brought me to that bookstore and taking the books, or 2 books of Alice Bailey. So that's.
Did you go directly to the books of Alice Bailey?
No.
No.
I'm from Germany, so I just ran into one bookstore into a very little town. I just was lucky.
You were lucky.
It's a terrific bookstore.
Right.
They were there.
But of course, I did several other things also in order to really learn something about. So I started working as a nurse in the psychiatric hospital. I knew that I would like to study psychology later, so it was a lot. But when I was listening to you, I recognized that if there is any sign or any person saying, hey, let's have a study group or something about meditation, I wouldn't have gone there.
You wouldn't have gone there. You needed to read privately and be.
No.
No?
But because there's so many people, groups, schools of thought presenting meditation, anything.
Yes.
It's just a huge market which is just confusing, and you just smell it. It's like, it's all these kinds of twisted thoughts, all these kinds of anything.
So how did you
what I would really need
Yes.
or what I would have needed at that time, or what I in fact needed. And sorry
In fact,
for
you
that.
still need it. No.
Yes, was an idea. So, what kind of school of thought is it?
You need to know.
What is it? What is it that this is all about?
Were you from a religious background?
No. Not at
Okay.
all.
No, not at all. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to see if your stories are the same. We'll see.
Well, I've been hearing about this stuff since I was 5 or 10 years old. I remember having conversations with my dad about space, infinity. Dad, where does space end? Isn't there a wall? He would say, no, there's got to be something on the other side of the wall. And I kept on going, well, what about outside that space? Isn't there a wall outside infinity? And that's basically, I never liked people telling me what their perception of God was.
Uh-huh.
You know, how do you know?
Uh-huh.
Can you prove it?
So basically, you were very privileged. You were born into a family that already had this in the
Yeah.
family mind.
Yeah. So when someone would say you have to believe this way or you're going to hell,
Uh-huh.
I would say, well, how do you know? And there's, and I was always interested in Jesus too. I remember reading the Shroud of Turin and the Spear of Destiny. I knew he was a great master. I didn't, but I knew he was just part of something greater,
Uh-huh.
something bigger.
You had a head start.
Yeah.
You knew about the hierarchy, didn't you?
In a roundabout way, I started rebelling against, I kind of knew what he was saying made sense, but
Uh-huh.
then I went out and started drinking and partying and
Sure.
trying to find my own way
Uh-huh.
to spirituality or whatever. I don't know what I was doing, but so in a roundabout way, I took it as far as I could without, I just about died several times in car accidents.
And so here you are, Brennan, back again where you started. And this time,
Right.
probably much more determined.
I made it back, I made it into AA, in and out for 10 years. And there's 12 steps and 12 traditions and 12 concepts. And the 11th step, it says, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God.
Uh-huh.
And the steps,
That's
is
interesting.
underlined twice, so God as you understand Him. So for me, that was, all right, no one's telling me what I have to believe, who I have to believe in. And I think that's why it's been around for 70-something years.
Oh, yeah.
You get to find
definitely.
out for yourself.
That's how I found, everyone says AA, it's a spiritual program. And then it tells you to go out and seek, improve your conscious contact with a higher power.
But when I lived in Los Angeles, Brennan, there were a lot of people from AA that I was around a lot. Because my husband at that time, who's now deceased, but he had been in AA for many, many years. And he one day came to me and he said, Glennie, he said, would you mind giving a meditation instruction class to all these guys that I'm sponsoring? And I was sort of taken aback, and he said, because they want to know more about meditation so they can work the 11th step. And I said, well, yeah, I'll try to take that on. And so I did. I devised a meditation class for these gentlemen. There were about 9 or 10 of them in the class. And it was a wonderful class. They had all kinds of questions. They were willing to practice the meditation techniques. And it was one of the most successful classes I've ever had. They were so grateful for this instruction.
It'd be a big pool there.
Yeah. So I think that a lot of people in AA are people who would benefit from having small study groups like this, meditation study groups.
Who else?
What he said about prayer is asking and meditation is, I've heard that in meetings, meditation is listening.
Yes, yes.
I've also heard,
So again, I think that even pulling from some of the AA people, as I've done before, and I gave several other classes to AA. As a matter of fact, I had a large study group in Los Angeles, and a lot of AA people came to it on a regular weekly basis. And when I moved away, they all said, please come back. We don't have enough people that know about meditation. We need to know more about meditation. So this is something that AA really needs, is an introduction to what meditation is.
so that's how I ended up back here. I'm proud of this.
Now you're stuck.
And now you're surrounded by it.
Full circle.
Yeah. hear from somebody else? Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something on a real practical level, based on what Stefan said, which is that, this is going to sound crazy, but Craigslist, I have been finding Craigslist.
I know, everything is on there.
I've been finding, like, every time I do an astrology, teach astrology,
Yeah.
I put something on Craigslist, which gives more of a flavor who I am. It's not just a flyer. Although I am a person that likes flyers in coffee shops, mysterious,
Yeah.
But I mean, every time somebody comes in, and I've added so many people to
No
my
kidding.
group, just through that sort of
I never
that,
thought
which-
about
and
that,
it's,
but
and
you're
it's
right.
in so many different cities now. You
Oh,
click on
wow.
a city
Yeah.
I know.
and you post it, and I don't know. It just feels like it might be a good way to, because you can get a flavor the minute that you read the ad of the, who's doing it.
Do you post on your groups or activities or?
I events or classes or yeah. Yeah. And I mean, just as far as obviously how I came to it, I mean, I just wanted to say that there was a moment, I mean, obviously I was born into it and I feel very privileged to have been so, but there was a moment at one of the conferences where I said to myself, I need to study this myself. And I remember, and it was because I was around,
All these people that know
And
so much
your
about
idea
it.
of these gatherings, there was a conscious moment of going, oh, I have to study that. And I remember buying some of the Bailey books at the conference,
Really?
So it was like as opposed to just sort of hearing it daily, it was a very
Yeah.
it was a
Amazing.
conscious moment,
Yeah. So there was that special moment.
Oh, absolutely.
There
was
was.
a decision.
Yes, a decision.
to make it my own.
And I think that if all of us thought back, we would think back to that special moment, that decision time when we knew that this was the path for us.
Yeah.
I knew when that moment was. I was married, unhappy. I thought, is this all there is to life? I can't stand it. I
It's a long
can't
time before me.
take this.
Nothing to do with that.
It was just horrible. And one day, I was walking in a big mall, and I went into a bookstore, and I looked at all the bookshelves, couldn't find anything. Nothing intrigued me. And the man that owned the bookstore said, lady, you've been here for hours, and you haven't seen anything. He says, can I help you? I said, well, if I knew the title of the book, you could, but I don't. He said, well, in the back, I have stacks of catalogs, and he says, you're welcome to go sit back there and look through the catalogs. Maybe you'll find the title. And I went through those catalogs for a number of hours and came across The Secret Doctrine. A bolt of lightning shot through me, and I said, that's it. I had no idea what it was, but there was some recognition there. And so he ordered The Secret Doctrine for me, and I studied that thing all by myself. At first, I mean, later on I studied with other people, but that's how I got started.
She likes to do things the hard way.
But that was the moment. That was a defining moment in my life.
Yeah.
This is it. I found the way.
Somebody else had their hand up back. Was it you?
Having lived in Australia and being a theosophist, we have libraries, and this is where I came to find about all this. And I don't know if they do this in America, but in Australia they have library evenings, and they have a discussion group, and you have a notice board. And so I'm going in to get my library books one day, and on the notice board they had meditation group, join the group, time, be prompt. And so I turned up there with all these other people to find out about meditation. And it wasn't a big group. I'd say there was about 6 people, but they had done this in all the libraries
Wow.
in our area.
My goodness.
And they were very, very forthright in what they did. They also had a website. Now, I thought of what you had. You could have had a domain name. I don't know if you've already got it, www.pointsoflightcentre. And then you had the map. So you had the map where all the libraries were and where they were having the meditations and the time. And then once a month, they had a discussion group so that you got together with other people. And
Very good.
it was like pulling out of other people different things that people were starting to learn. And then afterwards, they used to have coffee, tea,
used to have herbal tea or coffee tea and something sweet. They always used to have sweet things.
That's a good idea.
AA has that too.
Something sweet.
Something sweet. But it was quite funny because all these people, and I'm going back a long way, all started to take books and then ended up going to the Theosophical Society from the meetings and then joining in and doing astrology and all these other things. So it was like putting out one's fingers into the web of the libraries where everyone goes to, and then opening up a little box, and the people then would just come in. And it's the group that were behind it used to meditate. Every time they would meditate before they put the notices up, and they would ask the hierarchy to bring forth not a big number, because they found that if they dealt with small numbers, then they wouldn't have the dissipation. But the small numbers, the people used to seem to keep coming. So a very effective method, and a method that worked, and they're still doing it today in Sydney. They still do this method where they do it and bring the people in.
Thank you for sharing that with us. That's very helpful. We've learned a lot of things from all of you guys.
I've got about 6 or 8 ideas here already.
Yeah, really. Anybody else want to share how they got into this meditation study work of the ageless wisdom?
Is it too cold, by the way, in here?
It comes and goes. It gets off and it gets back to
Keeps you awake that way, doesn't it?
Yes, Sheldon.
Well, just very briefly, I've always been a reader, so and I love bookstores. So for a number of years, I was going to Carmel, California, for a little conference in January that was sponsored by Stanley Kellerman, who's a bioenergetic therapist, and Joseph Campbell, who you probably know is a mythologist. And Campbell always would go over at lunchtime. He said, "Where do you go?" This was a different kind of rhythm of conferences, 4 hours off. So he said, "I go to the library." And he said, well, so I walked along with it. There was this great bookstore there in Carmel. I forget what it was called. So I walk in, and the first thing you see are these blue books up here. And I read a lot of books. I majored in religion when I was in college and had a number of experiences which related to spiritual energy. So I had a feeling for this. These blue books, I looked at them and said, I do not want to look at these. This is too much. There's too many. It's an exhaustive thing. I'll read this all my life. Year 1. Year 2, I touched one. I'm not going to do it. It's just too much. There's just, it's a volume. Year 3, I figured I'll take the smallest book I could find. Initiation Human and Solar it was. Pull it down, take a look. I read 5 or 10 words and said, I know this voice. I know this. I didn't understand it exactly, but I said, I know who's talking to me here. So I bought 3 books, and that was it. That was about 1980. Just kind of kept on. Then I stumbled across Marianne and Michael, who was Trust, and it was kind of from here. But the voice, the books were repelling at one level. But the blue color I loved anyway.
That's a really good story, and it kind of dovetails with one of mine. Because after I'd studied for a while the secret doctrine, I was with my husband at the time, and we were traveling in, this is strange, I think it is Albuquerque at the time. And there was a bookstore, and he had to go somewhere else, and I said, I need to go to the bookstore. Would you let me out and let me browse through the bookstore? So I went in there.
It was Rick Kramer's bookstore, I'll bet you.
It may have been. I can't remember the name of it, but this was in the latter 70s, or mid-70s to latter 70s. I walked in, and I walked immediately over here, and on the top shelf, all the blue books were on the top shelf. And I looked at them, and the woman came up to me and she said, "May I help you?" And I said, "I'll take all those books." They were all hardback. I didn't know if I had enough money in my account, but I had to have the books. She said, "All those books?"
That's how she got started.
I said, "Yes, ma'am, all of them." So she put them in a box, all of them, and then when my husband came to pick me up, he was astounded. I said, "But I had to have them," and he said, "I guess you did." So, I mean, I know how those defining moments, you're just like, I know that this is for me.
I remember once Alan Wilkins said the same story as that. I think it's the
Did he?
Gemini energy.
Is it?
Share. And he bought all of them. And there he was. He was telling the story to a theosophist in New Zealand, and she turned to him and just said like a bolt, she said, "It's not about possessing books, Alan. It's about understanding what's in them."
That's really true. So true. Yeah.
Just this since I've been here, I had this awareness that the first time I met any of this, and the first time I ever chanted Om was at Alan Oaken's house.
Oh, yeah.
And either a new moon or a full moon meditation. I had just moved to Santa Fe, and I sat there chanting and doing the great invocation for the first time ever and going, this is really woo-woo stuff.
Yeah.
But that was your start, right? That was her start. How did you know about it again? How did you find out?
I saw some flyer.
You saw a flyer.
Well,
Are
you
we-
came in a little bit late, so I was just gonna catch you up real quick. Maybe
Thank you.
you're with us, and that is that just trying to state that there are a lot of aspirants out there, people who don't know anything about this work, but they're ready, and that's who we want to target with what we see ourselves doing in the future. And so, through this discussion here, we're finding out that people find out about this work in lots of strange and
unusual
sometimes
ways,
not so
yeah.
strange ways. Somebody told me one time they were in a bookstore and they were looking on the bottom shelf and a book fell out and hit them on the head. And it was I can't remember who it
Yes,
was.
yes,
It might have been him.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds like him.
So,
Sounds like something that
it's-
would happen to him.
Yeah, it does. So there's a lot of people out there who are ready, and we're ready to take it to them, so to speak, and help them along.
Yeah.
And so we really would love to hear from anybody who is interested in this, or anybody that you know who is interested in it, or anybody who is actually doing it in some fashion or another.
And that means when he says it, that means holding a small meditation study group, inviting new people in so that they can learn the basics of the esoteric work.
Yeah.
So if they were interested, they then would contact you.
They-
You would provide materials, or you would.
They would first contact us,
Yeah.
and then we would talk back and forth over the internet, telephone, whatever, and find out more about them.
Yeah, let's back up for just a moment and just say that initially what we want to do is identify key people who want to actually start a meditation group. We'd like to find people who can take on a bigger role than that and who can help people start meditation groups. And I don't know even yet that we're totally committing to coordinating all of that, but that is a lot of our background in both organization and teaching and lecturing and all those kinds of things. But we certainly do see ourselves taking part in that movement and helping to support it, get it going, support it not only financially but organizationally with my background and the background that Glenda has, and moving around and helping these groups get together. I love this idea. You were talking about a moment ago about the libraries, the various groups coming together once a month.
Do you know who helped Michael Moore in his film?
No.
Do you know how he got his film?
No.
It was the libraries.
No
It was
kidding.
the American librarians that kept Michael Moore's story going.
My
so
goodness.
he could get the film. So I don't know in America how the libraries are, but after I saw Michael Moore's film and realised that the story of that is, so I believe that you would have a very good hold here with the libraries in all over the US in seeing what you could do, and it's instigating even a training program. If you want to go in and start a training program with people in all these areas, well then you've got it down quite pat, haven't you?
Yes.
The Seminary Institute and the University of Seminary's website has a link section, and we would love to have you up on our link section.
Okay. Be fine.
Internet radio.
I'm glad you
Yeah.
said that.
Yeah.
Because, that's really cheap and it's worldwide. And also, with the webcams now too, you can just broadcast yourself and be everywhere.
Yeah, you can be on the phone and do it.
It's actually
Right.
Podcast Alley. It's Podcast Alley.
that you can go on.
Well, you've given us a lot of very interesting ideas because, as you can see, we wanted you here as much as you wanted us here. We wanted to learn from you. This is still in the formative stages in our minds. It's been in the formative stages now for quite some time, and eventually it's going to materialize.
Yeah. And I think that what Glenda and I will be doing for a while is just getting the thought out there that this is something that we're willing to do, and we're committed to do it if we can find people who want to
Cooperate.
to help us and corroborate. Is that how you say that?
I just said cooperate.
Yeah. And get together and put some ideas together on this thing. So we'll probably be doing the same thing in other groups, going and just talking about it and trying to find out who has interest.
And we're also going to be putting some feelers out in San Antonio and Austin. There is a huge group in Austin of people that are interested in these kinds of things. They have a little magazine that comes out once a month. And all these people are advertising and they're doing this and that. So I know that there are people, that are awakened, spiritually awakened, and they want to go beyond the average Christian presentations.
I have a caution.
Mm-hmm.
These are spiritual issues, which, as you say, humanity is ready for.
No, DK said that.
In our
Yeah,
conversation.
right.
My caution is humans have a tendency to distort.
What?
Distort.
Distort.
The pure when they pull spirituality into the physical plane.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at all of the great religions throughout the history of humanity, and we look at when we have created a power structure, not a power structure, but a structure of religious teaching, a power structure then ensues and poisons and deteriorates the pureness of the
Mm-hmm.
teachings. By creating an organization, you run the risk of the same destruction of the pureness.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah,
interpretation.
I'm sure that's true. I think that every organization is faced with that. I'm sure you've...
I was involved for a number of years with the Baha'i faith,
Yeah,
who I still have infinite respect for.
yeah.
The dogma of their teachings is what ultimately took me away from them.
Mm-hmm.
And they are not struggling so much because the way their religion was revealed to them, it allowed for the control
Mm-hmm.
of the organization. In Theosophy and the teachings, because you're looking inward and listening, there is, when you're bringing the general public from a very dogmatic, structured Christian background, they may not be ready to accept their personal responsibility for their own spirituality. And consequently, without having the appropriate openness and clarity and purity of heart, they will want to follow, and there will be others that want to lead.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as that is in the purity of the light of the universe, that's okay. However, I look at the times that we are in the times of great struggle. And what's going on between now and from the teachings I've heard, or the things I've heard people talking about the next 20 years, so to speak, is a critical time. We talk about the next, that being what happens in the next 20 years as being a pivotal action in what happens in the time frame of the Christ consciousness. And so I have no suggestions, just caution.
Just caution. Well, that's well taken. I have been in this field for a long, long time, and so I have an inkling of what you're talking about. I think one of the things that will guard us against that is to always search our own motives, our own heart, and to stay as close as we can to our soul and spirit, to our ashram. Nice. And if we are regular meditators and we're really pure of heart, and we look at our motives all the time in every transaction we do, I think that then we can't help but be successful in our work. You have to try. And like I said, when we first began, we are on the tide now of a high spiritual teaching cycle. And all these teachers out there have to get together and move out. And we're going to run into barriers, and we're going to run into people that don't like our teachings, and we're going to run into a lot of different things. But we're also going to run into a lot of people who will be so happy that they have found this pathway.
Yeah, I really enjoyed Sheldon, you and Helena's presentation, and forget all the technical stuff because it didn't matter anyway. It would have been nice, but it just brought to mind that the world is going to change from a grassroots basis. It's not going to be because governments have much to do with it. They will come along because they're forced to, when they're afraid they're not going to get voted in again. And so, to me, that's what this whole idea is about, is a grassroots movement where the true salt of the earth, if you will, people out there just going through life have a life-changing experience when they finally begin to realize who they are, that they truly are divine beings. And then we start to see other people as divine beings, that's how the world's going to change. And you only find that out from inside. Nobody can tell you that. You can be preached at forever. Most of the preaching I've heard tells you just the opposite. You're not worthy, you're this, that, and the other. But when you find it from inside, that's something that can't be distorted. That's true, it's real. And the only way to do that I found is through meditation. Yeah. And then through study and service. And the last thing I wanted to say about this whole idea that we're bandying about is that it's built upon that triangle: meditation, study, and service. And one of the things I was more excited about in our talks with Lynn and with Gail and a couple of other people was the service aspect of all of this. Once you realize who you are and you've done some study and you kind of get to understand things, then the exciting part is touching other people's lives in some way. And that's how we change the world, in my opinion. I loved all the things that you guys brought up, and the things like, Lynn, you're doing over in Africa, and so many other people, just helping people. It reminded me of Jesus before he ever started trying to teach, he touched people at their point of need. Mm-hmm. And whenever you're giving people good water or medicine or whatever it happens to be, you're taking care of those things first, and that's the service aspect that we can get involved in. So our time is about up, and I really appreciate you guys helping us out with this and taking part and getting involved. And
giving us your feedback and your ideas. That's what we were searching for.
Yeah.
And one more little piece of feedback.
Sure.
Heidi, in your talk yesterday, you said, stop, drop, and meditate.
You said what?
It wasn't me. Who was that?
Oh, no, it was this morning. It was
Donna.
Donna. Yeah,
Donna.
stop.
Yes.
And Bob Basil looked at me and he said, bumper sticker. How you tied into it was when you said hello, love. She went ahead and posted all those signs, and you were just astounded, and then you caught on. It's like, that's funny. So stop, drop, meditate, call.
That's cute. Yes.
That's good. Thanks so much. We appreciate it.